Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in what we read last week, continues to say, وَيَتَعَلَّمُونَ مَا يَضُرُّهُمْ وَلَا يَنْفَعُهُمْ. And they learn that which harms them and profits them not. So as we discussed last week, that through the magic they were learning, they were harming other people. One of the harms that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, in that they were harming other people, how? One of the harms was they were separating between husbands and wives. But here now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues and says that they learn that which harms them and profits them not. Meaning they cause all kinds of other harms, apart from harms to families and husbands and wives, they are causing all kinds of other harms. One of the meanings is that their magic can only harm people, it cannot benefit them. So this we should be 100% clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala restricts the effect of magic to harm. Meaning they cannot make a poor person rich through magic. If that was the case, they would benefit them somehow. They cannot make a stupid person into a clever or intelligent person. So the magic, whatever sihr they have, it cannot benefit other people. The only effect it can have is a negative one. The only effect it can have is to cause harm. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes this very clear. And this really exposes the absurdity and foolishness of all those who engage in this evil practice. Because if you know that the effects of this action can only be harmful, then why would you engage in it? If you know that whatever you do through this magic or through this means is only harmful, is only negative, is only going to cause a loss to somebody else, why would you engage in this? Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues and says, وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَمَنِ اشْتَرَاهُ مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. And indeed they knew that the buyers of it, meaning the buyers, the purchasers of magic, they knew indeed, definitely, without a doubt, they knew they would have no share in the hereafter. مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. Khalaq means a share of something good. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it absolutely clear, without a doubt, indeed, that those who use magic, those who purchase magic, they will have nothing of khair in the akhirah, nothing of good. So on the day of judgment, they will come empty. And how do they purchase magic? It's not with money. It's not referring to purchasing magic with money. It's referring to them purchasing magic with their own nafs, with their iman. They have sold their souls, they have sold their iman for magic. And those who did that, of a surety indeed, they knew. How did they know? Because the angels who taught them or who directed them towards it, they warned them. They said that do not disbelieve. This is a test, do not disbelieve. They told them the result of using magic is kufr. So they knew with a surety, definitely, that they will have, and also it was forbidden in their books. It was also forbidden in their own books. So they had full knowledge that they will end up with no share in the akhirah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here says, مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. An indefinite, min khalaqin. In indefinite and a negation. It means that they won't have even the smallest amount of good on the day of judgment. Every good deed that they've done, whoever engages in magic without tawbah, without repentance, whoever uses it to harm somebody, every single good that they have done, even the smallest good, will not be given to them as a reward on the day of judgment. It will be complete, their slate will be completely wiped clean. And then the Mufassirun explain, therefore what will replace it is only evil. They will only have evil punishment, evil deeds representing their actions on the day of judgment. So this is a severe warning to those who engage in magic. And as I mentioned last week and the week before that, unfortunately, there are many people engaging in this act, which many scholars said is a direct results in direct kufr. It takes away your faith, it takes away your iman. Others gave some kind of ta'wil to it, some of them, but a lot of scholars said anyone who engages in magic, because it actually involves acts of kufr, acts of shirk, acts of denigrating the Quran or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is a severe warning. And as I mentioned a few weeks ago and last week, unfortunately, a lot of people are engaged in this in our communities. If you know anybody, if you come across anybody, some people are innocent, not innocent, but they're just ignorant. They don't understand, they don't know. Because the people who are selling them this, or the people who offer this to them, appear to be religious. They'll come in a thobe, they'll have a beard, they may be even called Maulana this, or Imam that, or Pir Sahib, whatever. They come in the guise of a religious person and they sell them this magic, or they offer it to them. And our people, some of them are ignorant, and some of them are desperate because they're suffering from either an illness, or the son or daughter's not listening to them, or whatever. It's something that they're desperate to get help. And unfortunately, they get driven to these types of people. If we know anybody, we must warn people against this. It's a severe act of dhulm against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's selling your iman, it results in kufr. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is making it very clear that they will have nothing, no good deeds on the day of judgment. And when someone has no good deeds, it can only be shar. It can only be evil deeds on the day of judgment. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues again. He says, وَلَبِئْسَ مَا شَرَوْا بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. And how bad, how evil indeed was that for which they sold their own selves, if they but knew, if only they knew, subhanallah. Look at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying it. If only they knew. There's a tone of, not regret, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't regret, but a tone of empathy and sympathy, that if only they knew how evil the result of their actions is. If only they knew. Now here, in the previous sentence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا. That indeed, without a doubt, they knew. Here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, if only they knew. So in one place, it appears that Allah is affirming they had knowledge of what they're doing, the results of, they knew what. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمُوا لَمَنِ اشْتَرَاهُ مَا لَهُ فِي الْآخِرَةِ مِنْ خَلَاقٍ. Indeed, they knew that whoever purchases this, they will have no share in the hereafter. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that evil indeed is what they have purchased, if only they knew. It appears in one sentence, Allah is saying they had knowledge. In another, they didn't have knowledge. How is this? Why is this apparent difference? It means that, yes, they did know. The scholars explained it in different ways. One of the explanations is, yes, even in the second sentence, وَلَبِئْسَ مَا شَرَوْا بِهِ أَنفُسَهُمْ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. That evil indeed is what they purchased, if only they knew. Here, they knew the evil that they purchased. But because they didn't act on their knowledge, it's as though they didn't know. It's as though they had knowledge which was useless to them. Why? Because they didn't act on it. So they may as well not know. They may as well be ignorant. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is treating them as ignorant because they had knowledge and they didn't act upon it. Like what they're saying is, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying is, somebody who has knowledge that this is a sin, right? This is haram, right? And then he goes and commits it. He does that sin. It's as though he has no knowledge. Even though he knows, but it's as though that knowledge he had was useless. He may as well not know that. Because why? It didn't benefit him. He didn't benefit from the knowledge. So this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. Or they said, they had the knowledge, but they didn't know the severity, the immense punishment, and the devastating impact it would have on the Day of Judgment. Everybody knows, like when someone says, don't steal, it's haram. Don't eat of haram, or don't break your fast in Ramadan, it's haram, or don't miss your salah, it's not allowed. Everybody knows this, but do we really know the actual pain and punishment, the severity of it? Do we know the enormity of the sin that we're committing? We know it like generally, but we don't know it in detail. And we can only know that on the Day of Judgment. So one of the explanation is, yes, they knew, but they didn't know how severe, how immense the impact of their sin would be. They didn't know. And this is true because on Day of Judgment, only then will we realize the sins that people commit, only then they will realize the true nature, the true severity, the true impact, the true punishment, the true, evil of what they have done. And vice versa. The good deeds that we do, we may not think about the reward that much. But on the Day of Judgment, we will realize when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us, when we see the result of that good deed, that is when we're going to truly know the actual reward, the greatness of the reward of that good deed. So one of the explanation is that they didn't really know the extent of the kufr or the evil that they were committing. They didn't know the punishment, they didn't know the loss that they would acquire on the Day of Judgment. So this is another explanation. And here is very important for us to pause as Muslims, because here is a subtle indication and a reminder here that when we know something and we don't act on it, this is what they're doing. They know this is haram, they know they will have no share of goodness or reward in the akhirah, and yet they are committing that sin, that kufr. Same thing, many Muslims, many of us, we know and we don't act on it. And this is very dangerous for Muslims as well, because ultimately, Surah Baqarah, who's reading it? It's Muslims who are reading it. The Quran, who's reading it? The message is for the Muslims. It's talking about a certain group of people, but the message, the lesson, the command, the guidance, the benefit is for who? It's for me and you. So what we should be very wary of knowledge that we gain, and yet we don't act on it. And that's not beneficial knowledge. That's information. There's a difference between information and knowledge. Information, you could have a lot of knowledge or information, data about this and that. You could have a lot of facts. But until you act on it, it's not counted as true knowledge. That's why in the dua, we say, Allahumma anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa zidna 'ilma. We say, oh Allah, benefit me from that which you have taught me. And then we repeat, and teach me that which will benefit me. And then increase me in knowledge. So knowledge that doesn't benefit is useless. In this dua, we're asking twice for beneficial knowledge. First, we're saying, oh Allah, benefit me from that which you have taught me. Whatever you've taught me, of Islam, of the deen, of how to pray, of good actions, of haram, staying away from, benefit me from that which you have taught me. Meaning, allow me to act on what you have taught me. And then, وَعَلِّمْنَا مَا يَنْفَعُنَا. And then further teach me those things that will benefit me. You could be learning a lot of things without benefit. if you're not acting on it. As the Prophet ﷺ said, the Quran will be a witness either for you on the Day of Judgment or against you. The Quran will come on the Day of Judgment as a witness either for you or against you. It will come as a witness for you if you read it, understood it, and acted according to it. If you read it, understood it, and did not act according to it, it will come as a witness against you. So this is the difference between beneficial knowledge and that knowledge which doesn't benefit us. In fact, it harms us. Beneficial knowledge is greater than having a lot of knowledge. So in this dua, which I mentioned, we ask for knowledge twice. Before we ask for knowledge to be increased. At the end we say, وَزِدْنَا عِلْمًا, increase us in knowledge. First we ask, benefit us by the knowledge that you have given us. Then we say, teach us the knowledge that will benefit us. So twice we're asking for beneficial knowledge. Then we're saying to increase us in knowledge. So don't always wish and strive to just increase in knowledge and knowledge. Listen to lots of lectures. Watching lots of YouTube videos. Fine, is good. Seeking knowledge is obligatory. It's a good action. But bear in mind that we must put it into action. The best knowledge is knowledge of the deen, as the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith in Sahih al-Jami', verily Allah the Exalted does not like the one who is knowledgeable of the worldly life but ignorant of the hereafter. And knowledge is action, because in the hadith the Prophet ﷺ says that each one of us will be asked, on the Day of Judgment, the feet of the son of Adam will not move. And we know we will be asked about various things. One of them is salah. Another list of things comes. What did you do with your youth? How did you spend it? One of the questions will be, عن علمه ماذا عمل فيه, about his knowledge and what he did with it. So on the day of judgment, the knowledge that you will be questioned about, not how much did you learn, not what did you learn, but what did you act by the knowledge you had. Which part of your knowledge, what did you do with your knowledge? In other words, Allah will ask, what did you do with your knowledge? Not how much did you learn, what did you do with your knowledge? This is a question on the Day of Judgment, subhanallah. And if knowledge does not benefit you, it will harm you. Bishr ibn al-Harith, he says, knowledge is good for the one who acts upon it. But as for the one who doesn't act on it, there is nothing more harmful to him than that. And as we know, those who do not act upon their knowledge will be punished in the hereafter. In a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said, a man will be brought on the Day of Judgment and thrown into the hellfire, where his intestines will spill out. So it will be said to him, weren't you the one who used to command good and forbid evil? So he will say, yes. He will say, I used to command you to do good, yet not do it myself. And I used to forbid you from evil, yet commit it myself. This is in Bukhari and Muslim. So this is a very clear warning that here's a person who used to command good and forbid evil. He knew halal and haram. He knew his obligation to call people to good and forbid them from the evil. He was active. This is a person who's active. Yet he didn't do what he used to command, and he didn't stay away from that which he used to forbid. So again, another severe warning. Abu Qulaba, he said, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala presents you with knowledge, then present Allah with worship. Meaning every time you increase in knowledge, then your ibadah should increase. The more you know, the more in submission you should be. Knowledge should transpire, manifest itself in your actions. What good is knowledge if there's no action attached to it? Imam Ahmad, rahmatullah alayhi, he compared knowledge to wealth. He said the path of knowledge is like the path of wealth. If the wealth increases, then the zakah upon it increases. Meaning, the more knowledge you gain, the more zakah is due on the knowledge. What is the zakah of knowledge? It's ibadah, it's amal. And ilm and amal are very closely related, even in language. Ilm, you just change ayn, lam, mim, you just change the lam and the mim over, it becomes a amal. Ilm and amal is very closely related, even linguistically. It comes together. So there is a duty upon every single one of us that we should reflect on, what am I learning and am I acting according to what I know? One of the crises of our community is not that they don't know. Yes, there are sections of our community who are ignorant about many things. But do you think anybody is ignorant? Most Muslims in our communities, do you think anybody really doesn't have any knowledge of the Day of Judgment? Do you think they don't have knowledge of hellfire and paradise? Do you think they don't know Salah is fard? Do you think they don't know fasting in Ramadan is fard? No. All of these basic things our communities are well aware of. They know it very well. But what is it? They're not acting according to it. The main thing is not pushing them to implement what they know. And we should all reflect individually. Individually we should reflect, how much do I know? What details do I know? What about the rules of halal, haram? About what is going to take place on the Day of Judgment? About the severity of the punishment in the grave? About the nature of the hellfire? About the value of the hereafter over the dunya? I know all this, yet my actions, my priorities in my life, they don't reflect it. Why? Why is this? We are in danger of having useless knowledge. Knowledge that, it's not that the knowledge is useless, it's we're making it useless because we're not acting according to it. So we must make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to benefit us with what He has taught us and to teach us that which will benefit us and to increase us in knowledge that is beneficial. It's very important. So if our communities only acted even according to what they know now, whatever basics they know of salah, of zakat, of sawm, of the akhirah, of halal and haram, everybody knows of halal and haram. If only people acted according to what they know, there will be a huge transformation in our societies. And this is the whole, why did the Quran come? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us the Quran or taught us any knowledge? Is to transform us, is to change us, is to improve our actions, is to increase our rewards on the Day of Judgment, is to protect us from the hellfire. Knowledge is meant to be transformative, not something we just know and it doesn't move us, not something we just store like a hard drive and it doesn't do anything. It's meant to change us, it's meant to transform us, it's meant to push us, it's meant to change our behavior, it's meant to increase us in good deeds and rewards on the Day of Judgment. This is the purpose of knowledge. So he says that the more knowledge that you gain, the more tax you need to pay. Just like wealth, you pay zakat, the more wealth you have, you pay zakat, the more zakat you pay as a percentage. Same with knowledge, the zakat is ibadah. Whatever we know about nafal salah. How many of us pray much nafal? How much do we do of sunnah? We know of Ramadan is fard. Most people will fast in Ramadan. But how many of us will do sunnah fasts? How many of us will stay away from many of the haram that we know about? We know this is haram, yet we don't stay away. One of the key reasons is when knowledge doesn't transform into action, there's something wrong in the hearts. There's a sickness, there's a disease in the hearts. There's something wrong in the hearts. And the major reason, there's a couple of reasons why people don't transform or transfer knowledge into action. One of the things is heedlessness, ghafla. So people learn, they become busy with the dunya or busy with something else, other priorities, and they forget to put what they know into practice. They forget. They forget the akhirah. They forget that every minute is being recorded. They forget that their main purpose in life is ubudiyyah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to submit to Him in worship, to be a true slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ghafla is definitely one of the reasons why people know something but they don't act according to it. Another reason is that people are lazy. People are obeying their nafs. The nafs always commands us to be lazy. The nafs hates to strive. It hates to do action. It hates to pay extra money in charity. It hates to get up and do nafal salah. It hates to be good to others. It hates to do good action. So this striving, this mujahada that we need, striving against our nafs, we have to overcome that. And due to laziness, we can't act on what we know. Number 3 is a weakness of iman. You may know that this is halal, this is haram. You may know this is a reward of this good action. But the iman is so weak, I can't prevent myself from committing haram because iman is so weak. And iman is so weak, I can't push myself to go and do a good deed, to go and pray, or to go and fast, or read the Quran. I can't push myself because iman is my engine, iman is my fuel, iman is my energy. And the lower the energy, the lower the fuel, the smaller the engine, the less movement there will be in the body. It's very clear. But how can we increase our iman? How can we increase our fuel and energy? It's returning back to the Quran. The Quran will give you that fuel. How? It will remind you of that which is more beneficial, that which is more rewarding. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says here, لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ, if only they knew that this is much more better for them, much more beneficial, to do the good deeds, to increase in action, and to stay away from the haram. As Imam Ghazali says, don't be joyous and overjoyed and happy every time your wealth increases or your children or some material gain you acquire. But be happy with your good deeds that will accompany you to the grave. Be happy and joyous over any good deeds that you do or any knowledge that you gain and you act upon it. So we have to realize and remind ourselves by coming back to the Quran. The Quran will tell us and guide us and push us and remind us of what is the most beneficial thing to do now, here and now, today. It will remind us that we're here temporarily. It will remind us of our purpose. It will remind us of the value of evil actions and the value of good deeds. So the way to increase the iman is to come back to the Quran and then to slowly act according to the Quran and the Sunnah. Because actions is related to iman. The more you implement actions, the more good deeds you do, your iman increases. The less good deeds you do, your iman decreases. So it's a bit of a catch-22. Yes, iman, the stronger your iman is, the more actions you're likely to do. But at the same time, we've got to remind ourselves, and then we have to take action. We have to weigh up the good and the bad. We have to take account and then move, take action. Realize this dunya is very temporary. Realize that whatever benefits I might get materially by wealth and business and many, many other things of the dunya, they're nothing compared to the akhirah. And if I lose the akhirah because of the dunya, then I've indeed lost everything. So once we reflect on this, then we can move towards implementing, towards increasing our good deeds, towards increasing in our focus on the akhirah and submitting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Abu Abdullah al-Rudhabari, he says, whoever goes out towards knowledge, intending just to obtain the knowledge, knowledge does not benefit them. And whoever goes out towards knowledge, intended to act upon the knowledge, knowledge benefits him, even if it's a little. Subhanallah. If we keep on going to talks and lectures and keep on watching videos and clips just because it's come up on our feed, just because someone sent a link. We don't think about it, we just click it, listen to it, nice, move on. This is the first part. Whoever goes out towards knowledge, intending just to obtain knowledge. Here, at least the intention is to gain knowledge. Some of us, it just comes across, someone sends a link, we're just interested. We listen to it and that's it. We don't really pay attention to it. Or we go to a talk after a talk after a talk, simply because maybe our friends are going, our families are going, or we're just going, it's a nice speaker, just entertainment. But we have to go with the intention to act upon the knowledge. We have to make that intention. If I watch a video, I must make that intention that I want to learn and I want to put it into practice. If I go to a talk, if I go to a course, if I go to a seminar or a lecture, I should have that deep intention that, oh Allah, I'm going for your sake, I'm going to gain knowledge, but most importantly, whatever I learn, I'm going to practice it, put it into practice. Then you will benefit from this knowledge. Benefiting even from a little knowledge. You know, the Sahaba, subhanAllah, if you look at the Sahaba, they lived in a time before all of these ulum, sharia. There were no books of fiqh. There were no books of usul of fiqh. There were no books of nahw and sarf, grammar. There were no books of tafsir. The thousands and thousands of volumes of tafsir we have now. There was none of that. There were no sharh of hadith. There were no books of hadith. The only book they had was the Quran. They didn't have even books of hadith, except for a few people here and there collected some hadith. Of course, they memorized hadith. But in terms of books, in terms of their knowledge, they didn't have, all these branches. They weren't developed at the time. But the difference with the Sahaba were whatever they knew, and obviously they had the highest knowledge. Even if they didn't have tafsir, they had the highest knowledge of the Quran. They had the highest knowledge of the Sunnah. But what I'm saying is, not every Sahaba was a alim. Not every Sahaba was a scholar. But every Sahaba is an example for this ummah. Every Sahaba is upright. Every Sahaba, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has approved the Sahaba. Radiyallahu anhum. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with them. Why? Because they acted on what they knew. Some Sahaba, they only spent 6 months with the Prophet ﷺ. Some Sahaba only spent 6 days with the Prophet ﷺ. Some Sahaba spent even less. But the difference with the Sahaba, they acted on what they knew. They were so eager to act on what they knew. And they were so eager to implement what they knew. This was the difference. We're not saying they had less knowledge than the later people, no. They had more knowledge. But what I'm saying is the sciences, everything that we see today, they didn't have. And not every single Sahabi was a alim. But whatever they knew, they practiced it. And this is why, later generations, the tabi'un, they used to say that we used to know, because they met the Sahaba. They used to say that we knew a people who were not impressed with speech. We knew a people who were not impressed with speech. Meaning, you may speak, you may be able to give a 10-hour lecture, you may be able to talk about all the finer points of Aqidah, of Iman, of Usul, of Fiqh, and this and that. That would not impress the Sahaba. The only thing that would impress them is action or practice. What is your practice? What good deeds do you do? That is all that mattered to the Sahaba. They were not impressed with speech. They used to talk very little. They only asked, 23 years of revelation. How many questions did they ask the Prophet ﷺ about the Quran? Hardly any. Very few. They didn't used to speak much, but they used to act. When it came to time for action, they were there. They would sacrifice everything. They were people of action, people of amal. So this is what Abu Abdullah is saying. that have the intention that when you go and learn something, that inshallah, I will put it to practice. And obviously, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't expect you to practice every single thing that you know. You know, some of the scholars said that if you learn something new about an ibadah or practice, then at least do it once. Right? You learned something new. Maybe you learned a new dua or a part of adhkar, or you learned that, oh, it's good to fast on a certain day. Try and do it once at least. In that way, you've implemented it, even if you can't manage to do it regularly. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't expect us to practice every single thing. Nobody can do that. But we try our best as much as possible. This is the key thing. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this, one of the key problems in our communities is not practicing what we know. If only we did this, then our lives would be transformed, our communities would be transformed. We would see the effects of the Quran, the effects of the Sunnah, effects of knowledge in our communities. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us beneficial knowledge. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from knowledge that does not benefit us. Ameen. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, continues, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ آمَنُوا وَاتَّقَوْا لَمَثُوبَةٌ مِّنْ عِنْدِ اللَّهِ خَيْرٌ لَوْ كَانُوا يَعْلَمُونَ. And he says, and if they had believed and guarded themselves from evil and kept their duty to Allah, far better would have been their reward from their Lord, if they but knew, if only they knew. And this is now referring back to the Bani Israel at the time of Medina, that if only they had believed in Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam as a prophet, and if only they had obeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and guarded themselves from evil with taqwa and obeyed Allah, then the reward with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have been far better than their pride and arrogance that has led them to reject the truth of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the truth of their scriptures. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds them that what's preventing them from acting according to what they know is actually their pride and arrogance. This is what is stopping them. So for them is their pride and arrogance. But for Muslims there's many other things that is preventing us from acting on that which we know. So inshallah, we'll stop here for today, and we'll continue as usual next week, inshallah.